Hello and welcome. I'm Amritanshu Rai and you're watching Law of the Land on Rajya Sabha TV. Today we bring to you the offset policy, which is an important component of defence procurement. As of now, the offset percentage stands at minimum 30% of the entire value of the procurement contract. To discuss the issue, I have with me Mr. Jayant Patil, Executive Vice President, Heavy Engineering Board, L&T, and Commodore Rabjeet B. Rai, Vice President, Indian Maritime Foundation. Now for the headlines. The defence procurement procedure tightens the offset provision to bring in technology, foreign direct investment and joint ventures. Offset contracts worth 49,000 crore rupees are in the pipeline and offset worth 4,200 crore rupees have already materialized. Foreign military sales through the Intergovernment Agreement Clause a concern for the Indian companies. The Defence Procurement Procedure 2011 tightens the offset provision to leverage its big-ticket arms acquisition. This is being done to bring in technology, foreign direct investment, joint venture arrangements and counter trade arrangements to boost India's indigenous defence industry capability. Indian defence industry is gaining strength as offset contracts worth 49,000 crore rupees are in the pipeline, while offset worth 4,200 crore rupees have already materialized.
Any company, Indian or foreign, will have to subscribe to the offset provisions for not only defence procurement but also for the homeland security sales to the government. Right at the initial stage, while responding to the request for proposal, the company will have to spell out the willingness to transfer of technology for the maintenance services for the entire life cycle of the equipment.
Somehow the DPP has been welcomed. But the offset clause of the procurement procedure has not been very effective, and even the government and the industry has expressed its concern that the offset policy has not been achieving the objective for which it was set, and therefore we have made representations to the ministries and the other stakeholders, and I must inform you that the ministry has been reviewing the offset policy.
According to the defence procurement procedure, wherever the estimated cost of the acquisition proposal is 300 crore rupees or more, offset provisions will apply. These provisions will apply to all capital purchases categorized as buy global. Buy global means outright purchase from foreign or Indian vendor. If an Indian firm is bidding for the proposal, then it will have to fulfill the requirement of 50% indigenous content in the product. The offset provisions will also apply to buy and make with the transfer of technology category. This category will be purchased from the foreign vendor followed by licensed production. The vendor will be free to select the Indian offset partner for executing the offset requirement. For both the categories, a minimum uniform offset of 30% of the estimated cost of the acquisition will apply.
With the transfer of technology, we will come to see a growth in the manufacturing activities happening within the country, and the local players, the local small medium enterprises will definitely benefit from it, and I'm sure that the industry is going to be a big gainer.
As for the DPP of the offset obligations, will have to execute only with the reference to eligible products and eligible services like maintenance, overhaul, upgradation, life extension, engineering, design, testing of products and related software. The offsets may also include training services and training equipment. In order to keep the system a little flexible, the Defence Acquisition Council will have the authority to waive off the requirement for offset obligations in a very special cases. Failure at any stage on the part of the vendor to meet the offset obligations specified at the initial stage will disqualify the vendor from any further participation in the contract and render its offer as null and void. Dassault Aviation, whose fighter planes played a vital role for India during the Kargil War, recently got yet another deal to supply 126 fighter planes to Indian Air Force under the offset policy. With camera person Pramod, Aruna Thakur, Rajya Sabha TV.
The offset provision that exists as of now, will it create an environment for transfer of technology? My question to you, Mr. Rai. Will it really help in transfer of technology?
That was the objective. And if you do it and you have a capacity in the country and the foreign company can produce technology items, like Israel has produced 1 or 2 technology items, but they caught in the tax loop because it became more expensive than it was in Israel, which I believe is being sorted out. But you must know, offsets make a product little more expensive. And as you yourself have showed, 49,000 crores worth of offset orders, only 4,000. But out of those, there have been capital, labor-intensive items which have gone. If you go to Hindustan Aircraft, they're doing harnesses. They do the Airbus doors. They're doing the P-8 bomb door. So there is nothing great about it. But let us hope with the new policy that has been evolved and the capacity building that the country has done, because the domain awareness is with the people in the private sector. And the decision making is in Ministry of Defense. If the two can harness itself, as Mr. Patil in a previous program in your show has quietly explained, that they know what is the technology they want, they can put it in the contract.
I get it. Mr. Patil, the question to you is, the point that he's making about the transfer of technology versus the policy that we have at the moment, which is buy global, is it, sir? Buy global with transfer of technology. The foreign companies make this point that we don't have the bandwidth. The Indian companies don't have a bandwidth. So how will they absorb? So even if you get them 25,000 crores worth of offset, and since the DPSUs are already overloaded with orders, there's no other way but the private sector to go. And private sector, they complain, doesn't have the bandwidth.
As private sector, we've been very clearly advocating that the days of buy global should be over, and it should all become buy and make, and in the category which is buy and make Indian. I know what technology I need. Somebody else doesn't know it. And if I need that small incremental part of that technology, I should have a choice. Trust me to deliver that system, and I would take only what is needed. It would dramatically cut down the procurement cost. And that's exactly the issue. In buy global, because we keep importing a lot, and thereafter we say, I have my own, let's say, either an ordnance factory or a public sector undertaking, every technology needs to come in. There have been never a follow-on technology product which ever came out of that. I mean, this is not what I need to say. Any thinker on the subject would say the same, that last so many decades, we have never built a next generation product or a technology. Now, that's exactly where, as private sector, we create that value. We build technologies of our own on the strategic program, which is something to be seen. We did not buy any technology.
Also, the list, eligible list that they have brought out, they have clearly stated what is the eligible list for offset. Do you think it makes sense? You must have had a look at it. Do you think it makes sense and gets us the critical technology that we require? It's mostly got to do with maintenance, spare parts, this and that, but not really the stuff that we require in the 30%.
Under the current offset policy, I do not believe genuine great technologies will ever come. Technologies will come when we start talking of platforms.
Right.
When we start talking of platform integration, my colleague very rightly brought out, we are in the wrangles of taxes. If I make anything in the country, the same Larsen and Toubro from my own overseas unit can deliver it dramatically cheaper because imported equipment has 0 taxes and duties. If I make it in the country, my cost goes up 38%. Now tell me, who is going to buy it from me if I make it in this country and the same company could make it somewhere else and deliver?
Eligible
that's an anomaly.
Eligible list of offset, as it has been brought out in the DPP, is it satisfactory and happy?
Well, you see, they have made a list. But I will tell you something, and I'm very happy you brought this up in your program. If you give a platform, which Mr. Patil has told you, and he also is to become the integrator, he has got incentive to get that technology to make money. What did the Tata do? They built the Indica and Indico, but their problem was gearbox. Tata went and bought Jaguar and Land Rover,
yes.
and now he's got the gearbox technology in India.
Yeah.
Therefore, his cars are getting better and better by the day. The public sector undertakings cannot do that. So there is a golden opportunity for the country when you give the platform to a private sector and lay these strict conditions of offset on him. To make money, there is an incentive for him to get that technology, and the nation benefits. The defense force will benefit.
To my mind, revolutionizing,
Yes.
which Maruti did to automobiles, this policy could be leveraged to do that revolution in India.
In the defense sector.
Yes, provided rightly done.
Yeah, it's time for us to head into a break. When we come back, we will talk about other issues connected to offset. Welcome back. One of the concerns for the Indian companies is the foreign military sales through the Intergovernment Agreement Clause. This clause allows the government to ignore indigenous capabilities and grant defense purchase contracts to friendly foreign countries for diplomatic reasons.
The $10 billion order to French company Dassault to supply 126 fighter planes is expected to generate around $5 billion worth of business for the Indian companies under the offset clause. But do the Indian companies have the bandwidth to absorb benefits of this policy? US companies have been lobbying in favor of diluting the offset provisions, saying that the Indian companies lack the capability to absorb.
I told you the indigenization was going slow, but it's now gaining new momentum. Now it is gaining more speed. The coming years, it will be more faster.
The companies are also wary of the Intergovernment Agreement Clause. According to this clause, certain acquisition cases, imperatives of strategic partnerships, or major diplomatic, political, economic, technological, or military benefits deriving from a particular procurement may be the principal factor determining the choice of a specific platform or equipment on a single vendor basis. These considerations may also dictate the selection of a particular equipment offered by a vendor, not necessarily the lowest bidder. Decision on all such acquisitions will be taken up by the Cabinet Committee on Security.
Like in the 126 MMRCA, they have gone to 50%. Now there should be a caveat to it. Does India have the capability to produce 50% of a particular expensive item in India for the company to take back to its country? So what they are doing now is bringing in investment in universities, investment in technology transfer, and of course they are banking offsets.
India is the third largest importer of arms and equipment in the world. In order to take advantage of huge military hardware that India purchased, the government plans to further incentivize offset. The government plans to introduce a system of multipliers, which will give vendors enhanced credits for investing the priority fields. The Ministry of Defense requires metallurgical technology for building jet engines. A multiplier of say 3 could be placed on that technology. That will give a vendor who produced technology worth rupees 200 crore an offset credit of rupees 600 crore. Very soon the government is going to dilute the offset policy by allowing transfer of technology from vendors, which will be a part of their offset commitments. With camera person Pramod Das, Aruna Thakur, Rajya Sabha TV.
My colleague Aruna spoke to Kamesh Gupta, CEO Tata Industrial Services Limited, to get a point of view.
I have with me Kamesh Gupta, Chief Operating Officer from Tata Industrial Services. So first question to you. So what is the major pitfall in our offset policy?
I must compliment the government for coming out with a very progressive offset policy. The one positive change which they can bring in is on relaxing the norm for industrial license. This is very much required to connect the SMEs across global India Inc. and connect them to the global international players. That would be the best reform which they could give to the industry.
Coming to the FDI issue, it is still 26%. So are you in favor of 26% to increase that or to decrease that?
FDI, the way it stands today, I think is a positive step. we must encourage participation. Just merely increasing to 49%, will it yield desired result, is a $1 million question, because it's all connected with technology insertion versus the ownership control. I think these are two disconnected issues. We will have to see how it pans out in future.
Industry has the capabilities to absorb the offset, but it doesn't have the capabilities to rebuild the technology. So please justify this statement.
My personal opinion is, since there are very select few players who are participating in offset, the capability and capacity both are limited. It's very important for us to have tierization of the industry, which is a global norm where large companies would undertake the major obligation and the SMEs and medium scale enterprise would feed into them. This is how transfer of technology could easily be obtained, and also connect the last dot of Indian SMEs into aerospace and defense.
Thank you, sir.
One of the concerns that the foreign companies keep raising is that the Indian companies do not have the bandwidth to absorb offset. Now, Mr. Patil, we've addressed this question several times. The Indian companies will continue to say they have the bandwidth, the others will say that they don't have. This wrangle is going to go on. But moving beyond that, the enhanced credit that is being given to the offset provider, how do you think is that being used?
When offsets came in and when they started, this multiplier, as it is called, was not there, and the reason was our policy very clearly aimed at bringing technology upgrading, or let's say creating an industrial base, because except for few majors down the line, there are not many who had the technology. What did happen, obviously, as a part of the process, was technology did not come in, and then there was a trust related issue. There is an issue relating to whether I should give you a platform or not. Taxation apart, even if I wanted to do that, there was no way it could actually come in, and unless I did that, I would not be able to create that kind of a value which would meet that 30%.
Okay.
Now, this 30% technically could have been 200%, like many other countries have. And if we had it anything of that order, multiplier is perfectly in order.
Right.
Today we needed something which is direct, because the direct offset would mean direct technology flow in, and that direct technology flow in could also mean not only components, products, technologically advanced item, but also platforms, and that would give us an ability to then stand on our own feet, like you can see from what has happened in Korea, what has happened in case of Israel. All the industry came up out of offsets.
Yeah.
And today they are global giants and they export everywhere.
Mr. Rai, your take on that?
No, he absolutely right. Mr. Patil has put it, since it's only 30%, and the calculation of the credit that you get with the offset will be critical to it. If you can get technologies which are actually required and will help the country, certainly it's going to be. But for that, you need a DOFA and an organization which has got domain awareness.
It's time for us to head into a break. When we come back, we will show some of the issues raised by Mr. M.V. Kotwal of L&T, a leading voice of the Indian defense industry. Welcome back. To understand the issue of offset better, I spoke to Mr. M.V. Kotwal, Head Heavy Engineering, L&T. Offset, where do we stand? Do we manage to attract the foreign investor? What he's looking at for offset? Is the DPP sufficient to address those concerns?
Okay, if you give me a minute, I'll go back to the origin of this. In a sense, I was a member of the Kelkar committee. Exactly. This was one of our very important recommendations. And we discussed this at that time. I remember that why are we talking about this small number of 30%? You know, 30 is very, very low as compared to some of the numbers which we hear about.
Yeah.
What we decided is the first time India is getting into offsets. It has to be very clearly definable as what is an offset, and the aim has to be clear. What is the aim? That we want defense technology to come into India. You have to escalate the levels, or elevate the levels of defense technology within the country.
Self-sufficiency,
right?
yes.
If you want to get into that, you have to have something which is clearly definable, right? Now, why 30%? Because we said 30% will be direct defense offsets, which can be just quantified as invoice value of jobs done in India. Yeah. As simple as that. No ambiguity, no two opinions about it, and it was very simple. From at that time itself, immediately after we put up these, there were a lot of sort of presentations made by companies outside, I don't want to name them, saying that, oh, this is not offsets, you should include this and that and so many other things. And also it was made out as if India cannot deal with the offsets, right? Now, when you work out the numbers, it is a small number for India because the billions of dollars which we export in other areas, non-defense, I mean, it tells you a story. So that is one part. Now, over the years, what has unfortunately happened is this pressure has kept on coming in the government that you must add this or add that into offsets, okay? To the extent that, and I don't want to be sounding hypothetical here, we got a major player in the defense industry asking us about offsets, and we said, fine, we will be very glad to do it. So they said, we are setting up a demonstration center and you want your people to man that. I don't believe these are offsets.
Okay.
Right? So what they will do in this, or make a building, or now what is unfortunately happening, the recent ones, you had training. Now who is to decide the value of training? Your subjective value.
Exactly.
So gradually you will have nothing coming out of real technology this thing. So what we are pleading to the government is, when you're looking at these changes, first of all, you have to keep raising the number of 30% to numbers which are like 140, 150%. Those are the people but make sure that in the small number that you specify, let it be direct offsets, let it be connected with what technology comes in. So again, you can be specific that in this contract, these are the kind of things we want, and that will be valued at so much. That's fine.
Also, intergovernment agreements, and second is, do the Indian companies have the bandwidth to absorb the kind of offset that is going to be made available to them in the coming years?
So I will touch upon the second part first.
Yes.
That is capacity to absorb offsets.
Yes.
Simply take it that India, what is it exporting today? It could be, of course, I'm leaving aside IT because that anyway is going on even without defense. There is a whole lot of exports we are doing in engineering, in hardware, heavy engineering. We ourselves do a lot of export to 40 countries in heavy equipment. Then there are people who are doing auto, is a fantastic area where a lot of exports. Capacity is huge, and the numbers we are talking about is absolutely not a problem. And when you get time, we can show you the numbers. It's not a problem at all. Talking about these agreements which take place, which are outside the purview of a particular contract. It's more to do with
government to government.
Yeah, and these agreements are normally connected to what you can call FMS, but it's not.
Upsets your selling.
But in this case, for example, yes, it's a product which is tried and trusted. It is being sold in many countries in Korea. What are we doing? We said 50% has to be done here in India. And how is that going to happen? We have got totally, because we are leading this, we said, okay, now what are the technologies which we will bring to India and manufacture these things here? That will give us a long-term stake. So that's what it is.
I get it. Thanks a lot for joining us.
All the best.
Thank you very much. FMS sales through the intergovernment agreement, does it have any impact? But before we go to that question, sir, I would like to ask you about the integrity clause. Now, that is one clause that they have built into the 2011 DPP, which essentially says that if I bribe, if I provoke someone to bribe or in any way breach that agreement, my license stands to be cancelled.
I just want to correct you. The Integrity Pact came in 2006.
Yes.
2005 was the first contract which I signed, and I was the signatory from my company, and that was for a major indigenous weapon system getting inducted. And that's exactly where it actually began. It came into DPP in 2006 and stayed. There are companies who would want to genuinely abide and say, this is what we want, and we welcome it. It's something which stands to scrutiny. I say and state it upfront, I will not do it. To my mind today, if we are genuinely going to be able to implement it very, very seriously, extremely good step. For a democracy of the nature what we have,
what about the foreign country? What about the guy who is coming into India with the offset mindset?
To my mind, the issue really is someone who comes to this country can go away and run away. Someone who is here to stay would abide by that.
Okay.
And that's exactly, there are trustable companies, there are those who are above board on those issues. We need to be able to separate out the husk from the grain.
Yeah.
And if we genuinely are able to do that as a part of a policy, very right kind of a thing, you now put on the onus onto the company, say you will not do it.
Yes.
And the company would say, yes, I am not going to do it, and then measure him upon that.
The impact of intergovernment agreements, which is foreign military sales, FMS route, that, what do you think, why are the Indian companies not really taking it so well? How is it impacting them?
Well, you must realize FMS is the United States of America. They have the latest technology, like India has bought equipment, weapon locating radars. We needed them across the line of control because shelling was going on this side, while Pakistan had weapon locating. So therefore, when we need something very fast, and we found a route which is quite easy, where the rates are fixed, the contracts are fixed, and it is very easy for the bureaucrat also to go through. We are not very good negotiators in defense because we were in the olden era with Soviet Union and then Russia, where there were MOUs. The MOU was becoming a contract. Now we have to negotiate a contract. It has benefited us. And I do believe that in the FMS contracts also there is transfer of technology, but it is limited to the DPSUs, like Hindustan Aircraft in a large sense. But I think it has benefited the defense of the country. So at a particular time, for the security of your country, you have to do something. But as Mr. Patel says, now there is no need. You saw the 1551 product. Tata has offered it from Poland. Larsen Toubro has offered it from, I think, Korea. And Mahindra already have an advanced BAE system. So why are we going through trials and trials and trials every year?
That brings me back to that buy and make Indian.
That is
don't buy it against buy global. Buy it against an Indian program.
Make in India.
We would take in the technology what is needed. We would do far more than that 30% offset by doing more than 50 in this country.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for joining us on this discussion. It's time for us to end the show. You can email your suggestions and comments to law.rstv@gmail.com. You can also watch our shows on the YouTube. We'll be back with a new issue and a new episode. Keep watching Rajya Sabha TV.